you like let me know, and I'll go to the next slide because it has your name on it. Actually, I can just show you.
Okay.
Name, and then you can talk about your team. So if you just like want to prompt me when to move to the next slide, and then here's the one on the plans. So
okay, sure. Yeah,
yeah.
just looking at the list, I would say. Sarah, are you okay if we get started?
Yep.
Okay, I'm just gonna hit record and just.
Oh, I already recorded it. Yeah.
Oh, you're recording already.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Okay, awesome. So Heather, yeah, if you want to go to the next slide.
Sure.
Okay, so my name's Hannah Asprey. I'm the programs manager for Indigenous Health in Medicine at Dalhousie University, and we're excited today to have the team here from AAMC to talk about the MCAT and preparation for writing the MCAT. And then if we can go to the next slide. So the Indigenous Health and Medicine program seeks to increase the representation of Indigenous students in medicine, and we do this through a variety of different things, recruitment, community collaboration, mentorship opportunities, curriculum development, and we also have an Indigenous Health Advisory Committee. So it's myself and Mercedes Stem, she's also on the call today, is the program assistant. And then we can go to the next slide, and Sarah, I'll pass it off to you.
Sure. So I'm Sarah Upton. I'm the Plans Program Manager. So Plans, or Promoting Leadership in Health for African Nova Scotians, is designed to increase representation of African Nova Scotians within the faculties of health, medicine, and dentistry. And very similar to the Indigenous Health in Medicine program, we do that through targeted recruitment and retention activities, lots of student support. And I feel like I know most of you, so I don't need to talk too much about plans. So I will turn it back over to our guests today.
Great. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Williams. I'm the manager of the MCAT preparation products, and I'm joined today by my colleague Ileana Estevez and Leslie De Leon, and we're going to talk to you about the resources that AAMC offers to help you prepare for the MCAT exam. First, for some housekeeping info, I want to point out that you can submit a question anytime using, I think there's a chat box going along the side, and at the end we'll answer any questions that maybe haven't been answered throughout the progress of the presentation. And I can't see the chat at the same time in like my presenter mode, so my colleagues will help moderate the Q&A towards the end of this. And normally we launch with a poll, which is this question asking the participants, what is your primary concern when preparing for the MCAT exam? And I'm sorry, we couldn't figure out how to do that in Microsoft Teams. I apologize, that's a technical issue on my part. But we do find that these are the top concerns that examinees have when preparing for the MCAT exam. And I do want to point out that throughout this presentation, we do touch upon each of these concerns. And here's an overview of the things I'm going to talk to you about today. We're going to give you an overview of preparing for the MCAT exam and get into the details of where to find the resources offered by the AAMC. And then we're going to share some information about a fee assistance program, and then end the hour again with some Q&A that my colleagues will help moderate. We're going to walk you through how you might strategically prepare for the MCAT exam. All of the resources we'll explore today can be accessed in the MCAT Official Prep Hub, which you can log into with your AAMC credentials from the website. I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. And then within the hub, there's this free tool that walks you through how to create your own study plan. I'll also be giving you an overview of those same steps today, but the online tool is where you'll find the checklists of tasks and downloadable templates that guide you through creating your own personalized study plan. First, in order to sign into the MCAT Official Prep Hub, you'll need your One-AAMC ID if you don't already have one. Many AAMC services require this username and password in order to register for the MCAT exam, access the Prep Hub, of course, and submit applications through, say, AMCAS and more. The AAMC requires each user to have only one account. So please double check to see if you already have one before potentially creating a duplicate. And having more than one account might prevent you from accessing certain applications or linking prior activity to current activity. And to resolve this, we can consolidate accounts, but it gets a little icky downstream. So please be sure to check to see if you have a One-AAMC ID before registering for one. Then, once you've registered, here is where you would log into the MCAT Official Prep Hub. You can find it at AAMC.org/MCAT Prep. And it's going to be that first button, blue button, that's in the upper right corner that says MCAT Official Prep Hub. And this is what it might look like when you log into the Prep Hub. This is where you can access any of your products that you may have, such as question packs or practice exams, as well as all of our free resources, which are accessible through the Free Resources tab in the navigation menu. This is where you also find the study plan guide that I just mentioned. That's at the bottom of the left-hand navigation menu. And this is what it might look like. Here's what the study plan guide looks like when you launch it from within the MCAT Prep Hub. You can see that it tracks your progress as you move through the tasks of gathering information about the exam, figuring out how much you already know, and creating your strategy and schedule for preparing. If you prefer, there's also a PDF version of the study plan guide that you can print out. And both of these versions contain worksheet templates for you to create your personalized plan. And this is like a high-level look of how these worksheet templates come together to your personalized study plan. I know it's hard to read this example I'm showing you, but you end up with a weekly schedule that considers your personal obligations like school, work, quality time with your family, and it lists the area of study to target, as well as the resources and strategies to employ for studying on those days. And I want to point out that this example also includes a day off and time to catch up on the previous day's work. We want to make sure that you give yourself something to look forward to, and be sure to take time to rest and practice self-care. The first step to preparing for the MCAT exam is to gather some information about the exam. These tasks include understanding requirements for the MCAT, reviewing testimonials by other examinees, understanding your own timeline, and reviewing the official guide to the MCAT exam or the information on our website. As a student in Canada, you might explore the AAMC's medical school admissions requirements, we also call that MSAR, and the Association of Faculties of Medicine of Canada resources to understand admissions requirements. The criteria vary across residencies, language, course requirements, GPA, MCAT scores, and then there are also various requirements for application deadlines and letters of recommendation. There's some additional resources that offer information on these requirements. And Leslie, I think you've got these links handy if you wouldn't mind dropping those into the chat.
Yep, I'll go ahead and do that right now.
Thank you. As you're gathering info, your peers are a great source of information. So we've interviewed some examinees who have overcome obstacles in their own MCAT preparation. Read through their study methods and tips and their profiles, and you might find some of their experiences relatable. We've also updated some of their profiles to describe where they're at in their medical education. When is the right time to take the MCAT exam? The answer is when you are confident that you will be ready. We have downloadable calendars for the testing here on our website, along with the score release dates. But here are a few questions to think about to help you determine when you might be ready. When do you want to apply to medical school? Many examinees take their MCAT exam in the same year that they're also applying. For example, if you want to attend medical school in the fall of 2022, consider taking the exam in 2021. Do you feel comfortable with the content? The MCAT exam doesn't require any required course you need to take before registering, but if you feel you need more time to prepare based on what is tested on the exam, consider a date later in the testing year. Now, I want to make several important points about the timing of your exam and why it's critical that you take the exam when you feel you're ready. One is that there are a limited number of times you can take the exam. In a single testing year, you can take it 3 times. Over 2 consecutive testing years, you can take it 4 times. In a lifetime, you are permitted to take the exam a maximum of 7 times. And my second point is that medical schools will receive all exam scores, not just your most recent or your chosen score. If you choose to void your exam or do not show up on test day, medical schools do not see any record of those exams, but voids and no-shows do count towards your testing limits over the course of that testing year and your lifetime limits. I'm going to pause because that's a lot to take in. Finally, a good resource for gathering information about the MCAT exam is to read the official guide to the MCAT exam. Now, a lot of information in this book can be found for free in some of the resources we've already covered today, in addition to our website. The information on how the exam is scored, for example, is on our site and in the MCAT Essentials PDF. However, many students still find it useful to have all the information packaged in a printed book. And so this book is available at the WMC store, and it's also sold as a part of the complete bundle with online access to the practice questions. And I think we have inventory in Amazon if shipping is a little bit easier for you where you are to go that route. Once you've gathered some basic information about the MCAT exam, it's time to get familiar with the actual content and the look and feel of the exam. The WMC has several free resources to help you do that.
Heather,
Yep.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but you mentioned Amazon, and I thought that was a really good point. I just wanted to point out that sometimes we do the COVID restrictions with Amazon has impacted our inventory, and there should be enough inventory, but I just wanted to kind of caution folks that they should not pay for the official guide way more than what is listed on the AAMC's website, because sometimes when our inventory is low on Amazon, it goes to third parties and, they're charging like, $50, $60 for a book, and that, please do not do that. Send us an email or something. We try to be, we try to get the notifications from Amazon. I just wanted to point that one out.
That's a good point. Sometimes be sure to check Amazon. If you see an exorbitant price for the book, check our WMC store. You may find that it's actually like the retail price and not whatever a third party is trying to sell it for, something outrageous. No, that's a good point. Thank you for bringing that up, Leslie. Where was I? Okay. First resource for understanding what's tested on the MCAT exam is going to be the What's on the MCAT exam content outline. The descriptions of each section of the MCAT exam, as well as the foundational concepts, content categories, skills, and disciplines that are assessed, are all described on their own page. Some of the pages among the content outline even have sample questions. But if you don't want to navigate among all the pages that compose the content outline, we do have a nice PDF of all of the content to download. And sometimes we've heard from some advisors that they tell their students to keep a copy of the PDF alongside their studying throughout the semester or semesters, just to kind of check in and keep check on the content and skills that they may have already covered. If you want to know what the passages and questions on the MCAT are asking, we have a sample question guide that gives an example from each section of the MCAT exam with explanations, or what we call rationales, for the answer to each question. And then you'll want to learn about the features of the MCAT exam. And when I say features, I mean the optional keyboard shortcuts or the highlighting or strike-through tools. There are 12 example questions in the practice with the exam features tool. And that tool is only available from within the MCAT Prep Hub. Likewise, we also have a free full-length sample test to give you an idea of the look and feel of the MCAT exam, their features and functions, if you want to dive right in and take a whole test. And then once you're familiar with the MCAT content and its look and feel, you might identify and start to gather all of the resources that will help you study and practice for the exam. I can speak to the WMC MCAT official prep free and low cost resources, but of course, there are lots of other resources for you to inventory, such as your class notes and textbooks, maybe some online content review videos, peer groups that you may study with. All of our online practice products, such as the question banks, full-length practice exams, section bank, flashcards, are sold as a part of our online-only bundle, but this is also included in the fee assistance program benefits that are currently being piloted through a partnership with AFMC, and you may qualify for that. So we'll take a little more time at the end of this to talk about that fee assistance program pilot. We have two different types of roadmaps, which are these free downloadable PDFs found on our site and of course in the hub. The first maps content assessed on the MCAT to common textbooks. So if you have yet to take courses in biochemistry, sociology, and psychology, but you want to start studying the MCAT content from those subjects, we have these textbook roadmaps that tell you where to find those concepts tested on the MCAT among common textbooks in these subjects. Now, the second type of roadmap we have maps skills assessed in the critical analysis and reasoning skills, or CARS, section of the MCAT exam to specific questions in the Khan Academy MCAT collection. Speaking of Khan Academy, the Khan Academy MCAT collection is probably the most popular free resource for studying MCAT content. There are over 1,100 videos and 3,000 practice questions that span all 4 sections of the MCAT exam. So this collection, it was created and hosted by Khan Academy with funding and support from the WMC and Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. You may have heard that Khan Academy has retired content that isn't focused on their, I think, K through early college courses. Fortunately, they have extended the retirement date for the MCAT collection to September 30th of 2021. And we are currently working with Khan Academy on a long-term solution that will maintain this collection, including all videos and practice questions as a free resource. Now, WMC MCAT official prep products are really our bread and butter. They fall into 2 types of categories. The first being full-length practice exams and then question sets. We currently have 5 full-length practice exams, but one of them is unique. The sample test is available for free, and you can access it by logging into the hub. And like all of our full-length exams, it will mimic the look and feel and functionality of the actual MCAT exam. However, the sample test does not generate a scaled score or percentile rank, but you can still see a score report that shows you a breakdown of the correct or incorrect answers. So you might consider the sample test first, just to see where your gaps are among your concept skills and content knowledge. And then these are examples of some question sets. Among the question sets, we have subject-specific question packs, we have the section bank, and we have some smaller question sets like the online questions that accompany the official guide to the MCAT exam book, and then our flashcards. And most recently, we launched a new product called the CARS Diagnostic tool. And here's a sneak peek at what the CARS Diagnostic tool looks like. If you struggle with the critical analysis and reasoning skills section, CARS section on the MCAT exam. The CARS Diagnostic tool is a great place to start because it is a unique product in that it walks you through each of the skills that's assessed. It provides a video read aloud of a few passage sets by a cognitive scientist, and it helps you identify your strengths and weaknesses among the skills, and then it leaves you with some strategies that might help you improve those skills. I know it's really hard to see from the screenshots here, so I actually pulled up mine. So what you should see now is what it would look like to launch the CARS Diagnostic tool. And you can see that I've clearly been progressing through the tool myself because I'm 56% of the way through the tool, but it has these check marked lists of little tasks for you to complete. And it's a pretty substantial list. There's a way to look at it in a more condensed way. If you click on tasks, this shows you like all the tasks that you're expected to complete. And you can, of course, go right to the practice items and passage sets if you want to. So here's what it might look like for you to launch and practice with the CARS Diagnostic Tool passage sets. They look just like they do with the CARS question packs, volumes 1 and 2. You can still answer questions and review the answer as you go along. And then it also offers you the opportunity to review your content and skills breakdown by skills, and then also the content type of the passage sets. You can see that I've clearly been clicking through these because I'm not doing too well on my own practice set. But just to give you an idea of what it looks like to actually launch and interact with the CARS Diagnostic tool. And let me go back to my presentation. Okay, so that was this little sneak peek for you. Once you've gathered all of your resources for studying, consider a study and practice cycle, which is the idea that preparing for taking and reviewing feedback or errors from questions or tests leads to learning. Here's what that cycle might look like. I realize this is really hard to read, but we are planning to have this cycle and supporting resources that support each of these steps published on our website in the near future. But in general, here's a summary of what that study and practice cycle would look like. You might start by reviewing some of the topics listed in, say, what's on the MCAT exam content outline, maybe by reviewing your class notes, or maybe reviewing Khan Academy MCAT collection videos. Then you complete some practice questions, which should give you an idea of where your strengths and weaknesses are. Then you learn from your errors by explaining why choices are correct or incorrect, review those concepts, summarize that content, and then attempt answering questions aligned to those topics again to see if you've improved. The idea then is that you repeat this process until you've honed in on what you do or do not know and fill in those gaps in your knowledge and skills. Now, this cycle is actually inspired by a resource that was specifically developed for advisors to help their students study and practice. And Leslie, I think you've got a link to that resource for advisors. If you wouldn't mind dropping that into the chat as well. Keep in mind that the resource, it was meant for pre-health advisors, so it's kind of written towards them. But I find that portion of the cycle of studying and practicing and reviewing your incorrect answers to be a really helpful resource for examinees. Leslie, can you let me know if you've dropped that in the chat?
You gotta drink your milk.
Yeah, sorry, I'm managing my toddler too. I'm gonna get that right away.
Okay, excellent. So she'll drop that resource in the chat for you in a moment. Once you feel you're ready to take the MCAT exam, there are some final things you might consider. You might recreate exam conditions with a full-length practice exam. And when there aren't social distancing and isolation guidelines due to a pandemic in place, we often suggest working with an advisor or somebody who can help you set up a mock exam environment. And we have resources on our website that help serve as checklists for these mock exams. You'll want to make sure you have your travel to the test center planned so that you're not rushed. And of course, please read the MCAT Essentials for all the information on what to expect for test day, as well as our 10 tips for exam day. And finally, please remember to take care of yourself throughout this process by eating well, resting, and remembering to take a break. I want to mention that Prehealth advisors receive a 30% discount on MCAT Prep products. If you are working with an admissions advisor at a medical school, they can go to this link and sign up for special privileges that allow them to purchase products on your behalf. So we really encourage a relationship between examinees and advisors. And I think if one of my colleagues has a link to the MCAT resources for pre-health advisors, if you could drop that in the chat too, I think that'd be helpful. If, like I said, if you're working with an advisor, it's nice to share this with them so that they know that they can sign up for and purchase MCAT Prep products at a discount. Finally, before we get to Q&A, I want to talk a little bit about the AAMC Fee Assistance Program, which can reduce the amount of fees related to MCAT and medical school applications and preparation. The benefits of the Fee Assistance Program include reduced MCAT registration fees, access to medical school admissions requirements, or MSAR, and the MCAT Official Prep Online Only Bundle, which includes all of our online products like the question banks, the CARS Diagnostic tool, our full-length exams, etc. And applying to the Fee Assistance Program for Canadian examinees is going to be through AAFMC, which is piloting this program in partnership with us. The application for the 2021 testing year has closed, but please be sure to check the AFMC website for information on when the next application may open up. And I think I've got the link to it. Yep, the link to it on this slide. So in terms of eligibility, again, go to this website in the application guide to check for details on eligibility, but you're eligible to apply if you legally reside in Canada and the approval is tied to Canada's low income threshold set by Employment and Social Development Canada. That's very similar to the American counterpart. And similarly, the parental information is required. So again, check that link to double check your eligibility and to keep an eye out for when the next application cycle for the Fee Assistance Program opens. And that is it. I think my colleagues have been monitoring questions. Hopefully we've had some good ones come in. So I will turn it over to them to ask some questions.
Thanks, Heather and Hannah, Sarah and Mercedes. I don't know if you wanted to say anything as a follow-up too before we get to the Q&A part.
I don't think I have anything aside from I'm excited to hear that the Khan Academy resources might be extended a little bit longer. That was exciting to hear. Yeah.
Yeah, we're currently in communication with them, and as soon as we can, share what's the next steps, you'll be sure to hear from us loudly and clearly everywhere. But we didn't want folks to worry about it. I know there's this big scary banner on the top that says it's going away. So, but we're still working through the details, There is a question. So it says, Mercedes says, how much is the CARS Diagnostic tool?
Oh my
Heather,
gosh.
did you want to? Oh, I mean, I can answer that.
I am blanking on the price. I am so sorry.
It's okay. Now I'm second guessing myself. I think it's $25. Let me check for you really quickly.
That sounds right. I believe it is $25. Our full-length practice exams are priced at $35, and then the CARS Diagnostic tool is $25. Yep, that's right. Yes.
But it does come with the fee assistance program bundle as well.
Yep, it's included in that. That's right. And it's also included in the online only bundle, which is like everything. And then in addition to, if you're particularly thinking about like preparing for the CARS section, there are 2 question packs that are a little bit smaller. They don't have as many bells and whistles as the CARS Diagnostic tool, but those are only $15 a piece. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and as Heather mentioned too, along with the diagnostic tool, we launched that the roadmap to the CARS Academy, and you know, we tried our best because in CARS Academy the questions scramble, so we couldn't actually list the numbers, but we wrote like the beginning of the question and then tied it to that specific skill. All right, so we are getting some new ones here. There's a question about international students and how to get into the MCAT exam. I guess if I'm understanding the question, it's about maybe are there any international dates and sites? And there is a specific international calendar. I'll go ahead and find the link and drop it in the chat. And then, but we could get started on some of these other questions. Mm-hmm. Emma is asking, do you have any recommendations on how to find a study group or study buddy for the MCAT, even if it's just over Zoom or Microsoft Teams? That's a really good question. And maybe Hannah and Sarah, do you have any maybe specific to kind of maybe the DAO community?
I would definitely say reach back out to us and we can try to connect you with groups that are getting ready to study. We did just have an opportunity through U of T for they're doing an MCAT Prep kind of course that they put on as well. So we might be able to connect in with some of the resources that they have there as well. So definitely send either myself or Hannah an email and we can make sure to connect you with some students or to see if there's any other opportunities that are coming up.
Thanks, Sarah. And then there's a question, Jeremy is asking, it's my understanding that in the US, it is uncommon to have prereq requirements as inclusive as some are Canadian schools, like Dow, for instance, no prereq courses required. I'd love to hear thoughts about this compared to the US system, if you have any pros and cons. So you're coming from a non-traditional perspective background. That is a little outside of my wheelhouse. I'm gonna look maybe to Ileana. Oh, thanks, Ileana. Ileana just dropped also the link to the international MCAT calendar for that previous question about international dates and locations. Thanks, Ileana. And unfortunately, we were going to have someone from the admissions office folks to see if we could kind of tackle more of those questions, but maybe can we follow up with an email on that specific one?
Sure, yeah. I'm going to take down some notes for Carolyn, who's our admissions officer at Dow, and then I'll email all the participants that were here today her answers to the questions, so I can add that to that list. Thanks, Leslie.
Great, and I think there's another question in the works there. And again, sorry for the background noise. My toddler's like dropping things all over the place. Oh, here's another question. I've heard in Canada it's actually more common for schools not take into consideration older MCAT scores and only the current one. Is this true?
I can add that one to the list as well for our admissions team. Unless, Sarah, do you know the answer to that one? No, okay.
I can add a little bit of to the general, but not specifically to the Canadian practice. But in general, medical schools usually have a limit as to when they take the MCAT score. So in the US, you have a lot of 3 years. So medical schools will only take the latest MCAT that they'll take is one that has been taken within 3 years, even though the scores are valid for 5. But that does change from school to school. So the recommendation there is really to look at the school that you're interested in applying and checking and see whether they have a specific guidelines, because they usually have those very much prominently listed on their admissions requirements page.
I believe for Dal it's 5 years, but we can just clarify that. But I'm pretty sure it's the 5 years is what's identified on the website.
That's a good question. It's always good to double check with a specific school too. And Mary asks some overall tips while prepping for the MCAT. Anything we should keep in mind?
Yeah, I think if you go back to that study cycle where it talks about how important it is to go back and review like your incorrect answers, I want to point out that all of our products actually have the capability for you to take notes in the product itself. And I think that's where it's good to be really honest with yourself about why you got a question wrong, because remember, the MCAT is not just assessing content, it's also assessing skills. I think it's important to understand that to review an incorrect answer and say, I got this wrong because I didn't balance a chemical equation correctly, or I am unfamiliar with the content, or I'm just really tired today. And each one of those gives you a path forward for how you might avoid getting that question wrong in the future. So it's really going back to that study, test enhanced study cycle that I mentioned earlier. And I just want to emphasize that we have tools in part of that cycle to really help you hone in on those knowledge gaps that you might have.
And Heather, as I'm thinking about also about the CARS section, right? And some of the kind of tips that we've heard from our content editors and, even Jennifer Wiley, who helped develop the Khan Academy videos and the ones in the CARS Diagnostic tool that especially the skill set or the CARS passages where it's hard to not bring in your external knowledge, right? So really kind of practicing using what's in the passage and trying not to bring in that kind of external knowledge that might confuse when looking at the question and answer choices. And then also with the other one with CARS that we've heard is that, sometimes you're just going to be asked to select the best answer. So, and that's a nuance right there, right? So kind of really practicing those two, and the diagnostic tool has some tips depending on the skills, right? But that it's also, those tips and guidelines are also in the free What's on the MCAT tool in the CARS section. So maybe taking a deeper dive on that if CARS is kind of a particular area that you need a little bit of tips and hints.
That's right.
Ileana, any? Or Sarah and Hannah?
Additional tips?
Yeah.
So the one I would also say is really try to recreate as much as possible the conditions of the exam. So for example, if you know that you're going to take the exam on a Saturday as opposed to a weekday, and it's the morning and you're not a morning person, make sure that like you take at least a couple of practice exams at the same time that you're going to take the actual exam, so that it's like training for a marathon, right? You don't just wake up one day, and I've never run a marathon, so it takes from someone with no experience. But you don't wake up, from my friends, you don't wake up and decide that you're gonna run a marathon that day. You really build up to it. So really try to build up that muscle, and really try to recreate those exam conditions that you're likely to encounter. The other thing, for example, and this I'll add a little bit of personal experience. I've never taken the MCAT, but I've taken other standardized tests where, for me, the thing that gets me is working against the clock and timing myself, right? And I think that is also what gets most people. And so kind of try to recreate that pressure. So if you're practicing, whether it's a full length practice test or you're just doing questions and trying to solve them, time yourself, right? Like check it against a timer, and not just so that you know kind of how off or how kind of good you're or how on time you are managing your time, because there's also a time management, right? Sometimes it's not just knowing the content, but it's also, can you perform under those time conditions? So making sure that you're practicing and recreating those conditions is also very helpful. But overall, I think, um, just really making sure that, aside from the command expertise and understanding the content and making sure that you know the science and the different skills that you're going to be tested, is really recreating and trying to put yourself under the conditions of of an exam, right? Like, so try to recreate those as much as possible.
It's really good advice. Also, yeah, and I want to point out that all of the products in the MCAT Official Prep Hub do have like a timing feature. So you can actually go back when you complete your exam, and you can see how much time you've spent on it and do those calculations. Mm-hmm.
There's another question just came in. Says, I'm not super familiar with the format of the exam itself. Is there a time limit for each section, or is it a time limit overall? That's a really good question. And here, let me actually paste. I'm going to find the chart that there's a chart that tells you kind of how many questions are on each section. I think that'll be helpful for you. Yep. But just to get you mentally prepared too, it is the average, the seating time is about 7.5 hours under the standard version, and all of the so the free sample test, you can also just kind of, to Ileana's point of testing under those conditions, can help kind of replicate that timing as well. It's a long one.
That includes 3 breaks, though, which you'll see in the breakdown in the link that Leslie's going to share with you.
Did any of the other students have any additional questions? I don't see any there in the chat, but if anything else is coming up that you're thinking, now would be a great time. Well, we have a few extra minutes with the team from AAMC, so we really appreciate them being here.
And I think we do have a survey available. Ileana, do we still have a survey active to gather on the presentation?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, we do. Let me drop that in the link.
Great.
In the chat, sorry.
We would definitely appreciate your feedback on this.
And just circling back on the format of the exam, so the chart that I was thinking of is actually in the MCAT Essentials PDF, and that PDF gets updated all the time for every testing year. So go back and check it, but this doesn't change. And even now during the, I know that in order to kind of make sure that we're following health and safety protocols, there are 2 sessions, one in the morning and one in the evening, but we've gone back to the full length of the exam. So it's on page 15 of the MCAT Essentials, that link that I just included.
Mm-hmm. And then if you need to get in touch with us, you can follow us on social media, and you can also email us directly at mcatprep@aamc.org if you have questions about your MCAT prep. Yeah. Is there any more questions? Those were good ones. Good questions.
Perfect. Well, that was so great, Heather. I really appreciate you taking some time today to talk to our students. And alternatively, students can reach out to Sarah and I, and we can compile some questions and send them off to you guys too if there's anything else that comes up. And then I'll also send off those additional questions to our admissions team and have those answers circulated by email to everyone who attended today.
That's great. Thank you so much for having us.
Awesome.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Do I have to leave for you to end the recording? I think you're on mute.